Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm a traumatized trad wife.
And this week, we wrap up our tour into the Hungerverse with Mockingjay Parts 1 and 2. Before we split this podcast into two unnecessarily long episodes, remember you can help us on Mortified the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, or following us on Tumblr at MortifiedPod. Leyla.
Aaron.
We've ended the Hunger Games. So that's good.
It's a start. It's a start for sure.
You think that there's more we have to do? We ended the Hunger Games.
Yeah, generally speaking, I think the misconception between Revolution is that there's something that comes after. It's the after that's the hard part.
No, we're done now. Nothing else. All that other stuff gets obscured. It's fine. Just like in this movie, everything's fine.
Now, I would argue that even the movie doesn't posit that everything is fine.
That's true. They have a slight revolutionary infighting moment there at the end, which we'll get to. But, I mean, overall, how do we feel about where the movies landed?
I think whoever looked at the Boy Wizard franchise and saw that they split their last, mind you, I want to say that last book is somewhere between 600 and 800 pages, right? The Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, it's enormous.
They saw somebody fucking split that refrigerator into two parts, and they were like, surely Mockingjay, a book that is not sufficiently longer than Catching Fire or The Hunger Games,
right.
Surely we could do the same here. And baby, no you can't.
No.
They can't.
No. Harry Potter could get away with it, despite the fact that, you know, it's gross that they did what they did, and that whole franchise is tainted, obviously. But they really shouldn't have tried with this one. It was too much. It's the movie. One movie I think could have been pretty good. Two really squander the quality of a lot of the strongest parts of the narrative.
Yes. I mean, we'll get into it, but I actually I think Mockingjay Part 1 is my favorite movie in the franchise. Mockingjay Part 2 is just so boring.
Right. I don't think I'm quite as high on Part 1. I think Catching Fire probably is ultimately my favorite. But Part 1 very much surprised me. I was very happy with where it ended up. There's a lot of moments that work emotionally for me, even though the premise of the Hunger Games as like a concept is mostly abandoned in these last two movies. I think it still tugs on the things that make the franchise most interesting. And Part 1 really delivers on that in a lot of ways. Part 2, not so much, because like you said, the action sequences are just so fucking long. But overall, I'm happier. I thought this was going to be a worse experience, and I'm overall pretty happy about where they ended up.
They're so long, and I can't wait for us to continue our long tradition of Leyla and Aaron's city builder, because I have some questions about some of the city building that happened in the second of these two movies that we watched.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about remodeling fantasy Salt Lake City, but there's some interesting architecture stuff going on here. So I think I did the summary last time. Yeah, I'll do two if you want to do one and start us off.
I think we should flip it, because I'll just read two, because I will not have much to interject.
Okay, then I will start with one. Mockingjay Part 1 opens with Katniss in the middle of a mental health crisis / panic attack. She is doing the, state what you know is true. My name is Katniss Everdeen. I'm from District 12, which I think is pretty not interesting, but I think it's a good emotional way to start the movie and ground your viewer in what Katniss is going through. This is a very YA thing to be like, this is who I am, this is my identity, this is my name. But in this moment, Katniss is much weaker. She does not look like a strong, badass YA protagonist. She looks like she's a girl who has been through multiple terrible competitions at this point. And now she has to be like dragged away by these essentially soldiers. She is brought back to the med bay of District 13, which is where we find ourselves after District 12 is burned to the ground in Catching Fire. We are introduced to Alma Coin, who is the leader of this military bunker, District 13, that was supposedly destroyed. But it turns out they've been fostering this underground rebellion, and they've been planning for this uprising for like 70 years. We also know that Katniss is dealing with the loss of Peeta, who was sadly captured when the hovercraft, her whole little escape plan, trying to get out of the Hunger Games in the second book, kind of worked, but they got split up from Peeta, so Peeta's gone. We also learned that his Finnick, who is the fish guy with the trident, his partner Annie got taken. Joanna was also one of the people who got taken and didn't make it out of the capital. And Finnick's like, I wish they were all dead, and I wish we were dead too. And I think it's a pretty grim way to start the movie, but it does set the tone appropriately. And I think it also informs the audience. These last two movies are not funny. There are some moments of levity and excitement and color in Catching Fire and Hunger Games. This one is just brutal. Both of these scenes are, you can tell it feels like they were shot in the early 2000s or mid 2000s as opposed to 2014, because they have this gray palette. There's nothing colorful happening basically until the very end of these films where Katniss is back in District 12 and the sun and nature is kind of taking over again. But it's a pretty grim start to these films, which I think is appropriate.
Yeah, I agree. And like, it's crazy to see that both Finnick and Katniss are like functionally hospitalized. And you and I both made these notes independently, but I think at this point in the zeitgeist, because I was rewatching Sarah Zed's video on teen dystopia. Obviously, the Hunger Games features quite heavily. At this point in the zeitgeist, everybody was kind of over Jennifer Lawrence because her like earnest, quirky shtick was getting a little bit tiresome in pop culture. And but looking at these movies outside of that vacuum and just like seeing them for what they are, I don't think she gets enough credit for this performance. She does a great job. Like, she's not given a lot of lines, much like Kristen Stewart in Twilight, right? Like, Kristen Stewart is not given a lot to work with in Twilight at all in any of the movies. J-Law does not have a lot of lines in the Hunger Games, but like, man, is she turning out some emotional performances through these scenes. So I really liked what I was seeing so far.
Her acting is pretty good. There's a bit coming up where she is trying to do a bad performance intentionally because her character doesn't know how to act. And I think she does a great job of conveying how somebody who doesn't have any acting performance might try to deliver very stilted. I mean, to be fair, the lines that Katniss is given are like very flowery and stilted and over the top, which is why Katniss never, uses her calling cards or her scripts anyway. But we get this like pretty fun layer of Jennifer Lawrence pretending to be somebody who is pretending to be somebody who is doing a bad job, which is a fun, like, layered performance for this character. And I think it's really, I agree. She does a lot. She has again, she's given nothing, but she has such emotive power when she has something that is supposed to be effective to the audience. I think we've talked about this before. The parts where she struggles the most are the parts where she's trying to get us to care about Peeta and or Gale, especially Gale. And I just don't think that's her fault. She does everything the way that she's supposed to. And overall, yeah, I don't know why J-Law got any hate besides the fact that she was a popular woman at the time. It seems, very silly.
That sums it up.
Yeah. So at this point in the movie, Katniss is kind of rudderless. She feels pretty terrible about the whole situation. But what kind of puts the fire back into her is when PETA goes on 60 Minutes, essentially. And he talks to Caesar Flickerman, who is interviewing him about what happened during the Catching Fire last night. And PETA makes clear he doesn't believe that Katniss and him were part of any rebel plan. There was never any sort of operation going on to help them escape. And he pleads with Katniss, if she's watching this, to think about who she's working with, to not trust the rebels, and to call for a ceasefire, which, of course, in the district that's kind of built its whole identity around being a shadow government and resistance, goes over like a load of bricks. They are all calling for him a traitor. Clearly they want him to be hanged, or not hanged, but at least, prosecuted after this. And Katniss is like, well, that's my husband, I guess. Fiancé still, technically. And she's very confused emotionally so she's like, doesn't know what to do. And at the same time, she is being asked by Plutarch to become the propaganda face of this revolution. She at first doesn't feel like she can do it because she doesn't know what they're going to do to PETA, and she just feels like she's done with this whole thing. But then I'm not sure exactly who convinces her to go, but she is taken to District 12. And there's a pretty good shot of where they show, the district that's all burned out. They show the market that's been firebombed. And Katniss is kind of walking through it, and she steps on a human skull, and she has a, understandable reaction. I think, talking about Lawrence's performance, she gives a very convincing, horrified face, and then kind of the camera pans up and looks out at this road, which we'll later learn from Gale was the place where many of the people tried to flee, and they just attacked the road and killed 90% of the people who lived in District 12 by fire, which is really grim. There's just a shot of a boneyard, essentially, which I think is pretty good and powerful.
It's not just a boneyard either. It's she's standing on this hilltop, and the bodies are it's not just a clean, cartoony pile of skeletons, right? It's not like walking through the catacombs in The Hunchback of Notre Dame or something. It is melted flesh, charred in heaps, indistinguishable, melted together. It is, I was watching it, I was like, wow, horrific for a children's movie.
I think that this speaks to maybe just how we were feeling at the time, but I don't feel like there was this concern about what's children's media, right? And especially in the last couple of years, we've seen the broad censorship of places because they are trying to become more advertiser friendly. This is how we talked about this in an earlier episode, but Itch.io and Steam getting quote unquote censored by activist groups who are afraid, or not afraid of, they want to reduce queer content online. I think that this is just kind of broadly this understanding that children's media has to be completely sanitized and present a pro-family, or at least, it present a certain view of what children should be exposed to. I think that just comes along with the reactionary swing we've seen in the last 10 years. Maybe that's just me projecting, because, I think that the Hunger Games, for all its faults, is pretty useful as a way of viewing American authoritarianism. So, I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I agree with you. I think I am looking at it in a 2025 lens where I'm surprised that anything remotely objectionable isn't anything aimed at teens. Where, if we look back at, even pre-Golden Age Disney movies, some dark shit in there. Black Cauldron, pretty dark. Some shit in Snow White, pretty dark, right? There's a huntsman that's coming after her to cut her heart out. So I definitely grew up on some dark shit. The Secret of Nim, pretty dark, right? Rats getting experimented on, scary owl, whatever. So, folktales, pretty dark. Folk songs, pretty dark. So, I think it's just this 2025 lens where I'm looking at it and I'm surprised that the Hunger Games is not advertiser friendly, which maybe speaks a little even more grimly of the backsliding that we're seeing. Because it feels like something that, being this attentive to censorship and being this surprised at its absence feels very Capital.
Yeah. I haven't seen K-pop Demon Hunters, but that feels like the most recent big phenomenon film that's largely aimed at tweens and teens. Was there anything in K-pop Demon Hunters that you think was even remotely like scary or objectionable, quote unquote, in some way that could be compared to films from 10 years prior that were aimed at teens?
The main love interest, spoilers for K-pop Demon Hunters if you haven't seen it, the main love interest, his whole thing is that he hears the demon shame voice in his head because he made a deal with him hundreds of years ago to live a more comfortable life. And the way he presents the story to the main female character the first time is, oh, I made a deal with Gima to live a more comfortable life with my whole family, and we lived in the palace, and then I just kept hearing his voice until he took me over, and then he later reveals that he made the deal just for himself and left his family explicitly out to die, which dark, but they didn't show anything. There was no I'm thinking of scenes like when Mulan finds that village of burned bodies and the little girl's doll. Like, there's nothing like that, but you did see the crying faces of his family as the doors got closed on them. So I wouldn't say it runs away from slightly darker moments, but it's a poppy teen movie with glitzy music video combat scenes. It's not necessarily the most forward-thinking, push the envelope kind of flick.
Right. I'm just reaching for that because that seems like the biggest movie at the time compared to The Hunger Games, which was the biggest movie at the time. So,
trying to think if there's anything else, any other big.
I'm sure it exists, right? I'm sure there's media for young people that is pushing the boundaries and making them confront, things that are uncomfortable or scary. But that's just, it's weird that we had a film that I didn't do a whole lot of research on this, unfortunately, but I did find out the three-finger Mockingjay salute was used in protests across the world, in 2014 and 2015. There was during the Ferguson uprisings in 2014, somebody wrote, if we burn, you burn with us, I guess a piece of graffiti in St. Louis. That's all from Wikipedia, to be clear. But, a media franchise that is explicitly about revolution, about your government, it just feels impossible to happen today, considering the mass censorship we're seeing of high-profile media figures, both in late-night talk shows and at newspapers. It feels so far removed from where we are. It's been a long 10 years, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like racking my brain trying to think of anything, and I can't. I
guess Squid Game, but then again, I don't know that Squid Game is a thing that young people watched all the way through. I mean, maybe that's true, but my understanding is that most people got exposed to Squid Game through Mr. Beast.
Squid Game is a rough example because it is a very given I haven't watched it, but it is a very rough, anti-capitalist, brutal, in the vein of Hunger Games, in the vein of Battle Royale kind of show. And what happened to it? Netflix got the rights. Suddenly it's a game show.
Right. This is the Capital consumes every critique of it type beat that all my smarter leftist friends will say. Yeah, I mean, that it's hard to argue with that one. That's just like what happens constantly. But
I was gonna say, you can even say Capital consumes every critique. It was also part of the teen dystopia trend, because what happened after Hunger Games? 100 more teen dystopias. Did any of them bite quite as hard? Fucking no. Divergent is a clearly Christian, vibes-based nothing burger that kills its main character at the end.
Oh, I didn't. Spoilers for Divergent, I guess. Well, rip to Shailene
Sorry for
Woodley.
spoiling. I don't think Shailene. They never finished those movies, so she's in the canon of the movies. She's still alive.
Well, that's good for Shailene Woodley. I didn't realize Divergent was based on Christianity. I'll have to look into that.
Very clearly, yeah, and eugenics also.
I knew the eugenics bit. That one was easy.
Yeah, it's also Christian.
I'll look into that.
Anyway.
We are so early in this movie. Basically, after she looks on these, like, the destroyed ruins of District 12, she goes back to her home, which is, like, basically the only building that's still standing, which I think is really neat. Snow specifically singled her out as to be preserved, which I think is really cool. She goes to, like, get her pictures of her dad and her mom's and sister's old herbs, and she sees their cat, Buttercup. You noted that they had to ADR the cat, meowing at, or growling at Katniss because it's an orange cat. So he's just happy to get picked up. He's having a great time,
he looks
which I think is very fun.
So content in her arms.
Yeah, he's supposed to hate Katniss, but he's having a great time. He never looks upset at all. I love that cat. Katniss goes back and takes the cat back to Prim. Prim has this conversation with her where she explains, Katniss, you have a lot of leverage over these people, even if they don't want to admit that, and you can make concessions and then that's where Katniss is like, okay, I'll be your Mockingjay, I'll shoot these propaganda footages, films for you, but PETA is going to get a full pardon out of this, and also my sister gets to keep the cat, which is the only laugh line, I think, in this entire movie.
Yeah. It also is like, it's a funny scene because, she comes in looking to make demands and she has her little crumpled up piece of paper where she's written all her demands, but she doesn't want to, like, pick it up and put it in front of her face. So she's always keeping it kind of crotch level and looking down. And I think she played it like she had more things written down because she was reading it for a long time, and then finally crumples it and kind of resignedly goes, my sister gets to keep her cat, which... just a good acting beat. It was just nice. You feel that she's kind of young. This is her first time. She's trying to use the leverage that she's got. Like, it's good. It was funny. And we love to see more of Buttercup.
Yeah, 100%. So, like I alluded to earlier, she's very bad at being an actor. I don't know if the CGI is intentional to be like, oh, it's a future dystopia. We got to have CGI everything. But the footage that they shoot of her is, like, completely CGI. And I think that is, like... again, kind of predicting the next couple of years of what acting will look like. This is, this came out in 2014. We are already seeing the Marvel movies take America by storm. And when you talk about the Disney Marvel, cinematic Disney Plus universe, you eventually have to talk about the volume. You probably know what the volume is, right, Leyla?
Yeah. It's where you shoot things on a blue screen.
And in particular, this volume, type setup where it's just all sorts of stuff that gets CGI'd in becomes a real problem for a lot of actors here in the next, couple, decade or so after, this 2010s, early 2000s era of movies where people are actually, technology is getting like, okay, like CGI is starting to be less ugly and actually, workable. But at the same time, it starts to get overused. And we get this problem where actors are just constantly being like, I didn't become an actor to just act alone on an empty stage. This fucking sucks. And I think we're definitely seeing that here with Katniss, who is like, yeah, I'm just getting CGI'd into this thing. I feel really fucking stupid. I have to say these dumbass lines. And Haymitch is like, hey, folks, we gotta do something about this.
Yeah, acting is reacting. So if you have nothing to react to... right? And that's the complaint about these big Marvel movies, is that it's these folks in a volume acting against a tennis ball, and because of Marvel's, like, giant secrecy, a lot of the time they actually don't know who the other character in the scene is. So it's brutal, right? And
it's crazy.
It's not how I would like to make art, for sure. But this is Haymitch's, I think, first appearance in the movie.
Yes, because they reference him they reference him drying out after the events of Catching Fire, but I guess because also in District 13 you can't drink alcohol, presumably, because it's very military, it's very strict. So yeah, this is the first time he shows up, and Katniss is like, "I didn't recognize you sober," which is a pretty epic burn. But yeah, it's nice to have. It's nice to have this actor. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Woody Harrelson, but he does bring some of the few moments of levity in this film, and it's just nice to have him be like, "Man, all this dystopia stuff's fucking stupid."
Him and I think we've already met Effie again at this point, have we?
We're about to. She is in like what she determines her cell. You know, she doesn't have any of her wigs or fancy clothing. She's just wearing a jumpsuit, and she's having a terrible time. But Elizabeth Banks is again doing such a good performance of somebody having a bad time who after having all the color drained out of her life. It's great.
Elizabeth Banks, when we meet her, she does this visually throughout the appearances of Elizabeth Banks in this movie, she starts to like unmake her jumpsuits and make just like different gray clothes with like cooler silhouettes out of them, which I just really like as a touch. Like, she's like, "Oh, fine, you're gonna give me a jumpsuit, then fuck you, I'm gonna make something of it." And she has this like cool blue scarf she wears over her hair, and she's like, "Oh my god, thank God I remembered these were all the rage." So there's at least something on my head. But she does this, I noticed it in the first time we meet her, which we're about to talk about, but like, she always wears heels, like really high heels as Effie, but not in District 13. They don't have those shoes for her. But the way she walks, she's still on her tiptoes doing her jaunty little heel walk as if she's still wearing heels. Just a great little choice. Just incredible. Just really good.
It's really good. That's really good. So like we were talking about, they recruit Effie to be a part of Katniss's propaganda team, where they're going to, basically they determine that they have to send her out into the field, otherwise they're not going to get any genuine emotion out of her. So they assemble this team, which includes Haymitch, Gale, and Effie, but also this like group of Capitol defectors, which includes Castor and Pollux, who are brothers, who are cameramen. One of them is an AVOX. This is the first explicit reference to AVOXs, which are the like servant slave class of Capitol workers who have their tongues removed. Really neat concept, I think. We also get we also get introduced to Natalie Dormer, for lack of a better word. She's cool and hot in this movie and doesn't really do a whole lot, but she's there to look cool. We also get introduced to Mahershala Ali, who is too good to be in this movie, frankly. He shouldn't be here, but he's just like some soldier guy.
It was so nice to see him. I don't know what he's up to. I should look him up. I should see what he's been up to recently. Because he was pretty hot in like the mid 2010s. Mahershala Ali
Green Book,
everywhere.
Right? He was in Green Book, which won the Oscar that year. I believe.
Disagree, but well, yes, correct.
Listen,
I disagree with the decision.
Bad movie, yes. Terrible dog shit, premise for a movie. But I'm sure Mahershala Ali did his fucking best.
As he does in everything he said, because he's a great actor.
Right.
But he is there serving face, serving seriousness, serving soldier. I'm in. I loved every appearance of him. You could tell he was faithful to District 13, but had like more of a paternal feeling towards these teens that they were actively endangering. Great character. Incredible. Thank you.
Yeah,
I think Colonel Briggs or Biggs was his name.
Boggs.
I was close. Boggs.
Yep. Good. They take Katniss to the basically siege of District 8. There's a big battle going on there. We meet Commander Paylor, who is a rebel leader just doing her best. She will eventually become the president of Panem. We'll get there. But right now, she's just like, "Hey, my troops are all wounded. Could you give them a pep talk?" And Katniss is like, "Sure." She goes into a hospital and is just overwhelmed by the suffering of all these people. The first thing they do, even before that, is they walk by just like a line of corpses, which I think is really neat. Just to be like, "Oh yeah, this is what Civil War looks like, y'all." It's just people just getting fucking slaughtered, which I think is one of the better aspects of this series of movies. Is like, hey, Civil War fucking sucks. There's nothing cool about it. You're just going to have war crimes constantly on both sides, and people are going to die, and people are going to be maimed and injured and just in shitty conditions. And I don't know, right? It's just like, you know, I fear for our country every single day. And it's just like, yeah, this is probably what an American Civil War would look like, except like way, way worse. It wouldn't be 2 factions, it'd be like 13, and they'd just all be doing war crimes. So, yeah.
12 right-wing 11 right-wing factions and 2 left-wing ones. I feel like the shit of course on the right is so complicated.
Yeah, it's rough. I don't want to know any more about that than I have to.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the wildest sequences in this movie, though, is that while Katniss is doing this, like, reaction to the hospital victims, Natalie Dormer is uploading this footage essentially live. She's got, like, iMovie on her phone and is cutting together the footage instantaneously and then uploading it live. And so minutes later...
Predicting TikTok.
I guess that's a great point. Holy shit. Yeah. They're out here shooting TikToks. And as soon as that TikTok goes live... President Snow's like, oh, I know where that is. We should just bomb that. No survivor. Target the wounded is actually his exact line, which rules. Donald Sutherland, again, maybe the only person in both of these movies who seems like they're having any fun. I think he's having a great time being a piece of shit.
I would argue Natalie Dormer also had a bit of fun.
That's true. She's serving cool techno rebel, which I guess is fun. But yeah, they attack the hospital. Gale and Katniss shoot down some warplanes with their bow and crossbow, which is really stupid, but I love it.
It was the red-tipped exploding arrow. They set that up at a previous scene. I bought it.
They set it up, but I don't know that there's a hunter alive who could shoot a plane out of the sky with a bow.
We don't need one. We have one in fiction. Her name is Katniss Everdeen.
Yeah, shout out to J-Law. The hospital is annihilated, and they do a second TikTok in front of the burned hospital. And they're like, Katniss, what are you feeling? And Katniss is like, this is why you can't ever, not fight Snow. There's going to be no survivors from this bombing. And we get the line, we have to fight back against Snow, blah, blah, blah. If we burn, you burn with us. And that becomes the rallying cry. We get these subsequent shots of people rising up against the Capitol. And I want to say District 7, District 5, I don't remember. It's the logging district. But basically, there's a scene where a bunch of dudes climb up some trees like goddamn spider monkeys. It looks insane. I don't know how they're able to scale these trees so quickly, but they do. And then they say, though, if we burn, you burn with us thing, and set off some mines beneath the soldiers. We also get maybe my favorite scene in this entire movie, which is a bunch of people storming the hydroelectric dam. This comes after they record Katniss doing a song. So I'm going to go back a little bit. PETA is shown on TV again calling for a ceasefire. He looks like he's being hit. He's getting his fingernails pulled out. So Katniss is like, this is not... He is definitely doing this under coercion. This sucks. Meanwhile, Gale is like, well, I wouldn't do that even if they tortured me. It's like, thanks, man. Good. Thank you for your input. Shut the fuck up. A lot of this movie is Gale being like, having some kind of interesting insights. Like, he says that you only look at me or you only kiss me when you feel like I'm in pain, which I think is a really cool character insight for Katniss to be like, yeah, she is trying to do the only thing she can, which is to stop people's pain, and is using her body to do that. And I like that as a character insight because that's kind of her whole arc here, is like she's trying to help people and in doing so destroys herself in a big way. But hearing it from Gale being like, you gotta choose, you're just gonna choose PETA over me. There's nothing I could do that could make you like me more than PETA. He's just very annoying. Again, it's just because Liam Hemsworth looks like he's 38 in this, but it's fine.
It's just, I feel like this gets undercut by later when he's talking about PETA, because he goes to rescue him or whatever. We'll get to it in a second. It's undercut by the fact that when he is talking about PETA, he's like, I need him to get better because if he doesn't, I don't stand a chance, which is the continuation of this thought of like, if we are both in pain, his pain will win over mine.
Yeah.
Bitch, Are we for serious? You know,
I like that, though. I like that as a character insight. I just don't like Gale.
Yes, that's it. Because, so, an insight into our friendship. We had a Nick Cage movie night last night. And we watched Moonstruck, which is maybe the best movie of all time. We are deeply into Moonstruck in this podcast. I don't know if you remember, but when Nick Cage gets introduced as Ronnie, he is very emo, and the girl who works with him at the bakery says of him as he leaves the room, "That's the most tormented man I've ever met. I'm in love with him." And in that moment, I bought that more than I buy whatever the fuck is happening with Gale. You know what I mean? That is the positive version, the believable version of somebody looking at a man who's tormented and being like, oh my God, I just want to fix him. But Katniss doesn't want to fix him, so it doesn't work.
Right, yeah. I think these movies have vastly different tones, Moonstruck and the Mockingjay Part 1. But also, yeah, I think it is just like, yeah, Katniss really isn't interested in fixing or saving anyone except for everyone. She's interested in saving Peeta more than she is Gale, which makes the rest of this love triangle functionally useless. It's nothing. So again,
she's interested in saving Peeta, and there's this, like, every once in a while we get a line about how Gale helped her family or helps his own family or so self-sacrifice. We don't see any of that, though. So what we see is Peeta trying his best and then Liam Hemsworth looking old.
Yeah, that's about it, unfortunately.
No hate to Liam Hemsworth. He really was doing his best with nothing.
Right. I think he does a good job of being brooding. It's just that his character sucks.
Yeah, but he's not being helped by the script. That's all it is.
Yep. But here we get this bit where Katniss is like, okay, we have to get Peeta back. We have to show the world what they did to 12. So they return to District 12. At the same time, I don't think Katniss does a lot of talking here because she's just like so upset about the, still cooling bones of her neighbors that she's kind of standing over. Gale's explanation of what happened at District 12, I think, is actually really interesting, and Natalie Dormer is able to coax that story out of him in a compelling way. But the real moment that actually works for me here is where one of the cameramen, I want to say it's Castor. It's either Castor or Pollux. It's the one who can't talk. He convinces Katniss to sing, and she sings this folk song called The Hanging Tree. And I like this song a lot. I like that it is tapping into like a folk music / like kind of grim, like literal gallows humor about like what I feel like a lot of cultures, but especially more rural cultures, have a more gallows humor kind of approach to life, because like when you're out in nature and doing agricultural work, you just kind of have to fucking roll with the punches. And I like that they're tapping into that, like, yeah, let's go to the hanging tree where the man who was accused of murder was executed, and we will also kill ourselves. And that's like becomes the vanguard of the revolution, right? This is, when you think about Bella Ciao, right, which is also a grim song about, if I die, a partisan, bury me among the flowers in the mountains. Right, songs about revolution are very rarely explicitly they're very rarely entirely positive. Sometimes you just kind of be like, yeah, we're fighting a war and it fucking sucks. And I like the hanging tree. I think the bit where they attack the hydroelectric dam is great, even if the like crowd singing the song is goofy because they're like doing the harmonies. It's silly, but I think it works because it gets at this like spirit of revolution. It's like, okay, there's just more of them than there are of us. There's just something about a group of people that are functionally unarmed running towards a group of people with guns that I think is very compelling, because it's like that's a really brave and a scary thing to do, and like so many of those people get shot to death that I think it's just an effective scene when they attack the dam. I don't know if you have thoughts on the dam scene, but that stuck with me for a decade.
Yeah, I liked it. I remember disliking this rendition of The Hanging Tree because at the time, because I was keeping up with these movies contemporaneously and was very much part of like the Hunger Games fandom as it existed back then. There was a different arrangement, a fan arrangement of The Hanging Tree that I quite liked. But now, again, watching these movies 10 years removed, I'm like, yeah, of course it's a folk song. It makes complete sense for it to be a kind of Appalachian style folk song. So I really like it. I thought it was great. J-Law can sing. I forgot. She can sing. Good for her. Good scene. Good stuff. I found it again. This movie, I kept waiting for because I remember not liking Mockingjay, so I kept waiting to not like this movie. But I was locked in the whole time. It was great.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about it. So this dam attack knocks out the power in the Capitol, and this gives them, the rebels, an opportunity to go and extract the victors. Gale volunteers to be a part of this squad, along with Mahershala Ali. Again, they...
Too good for this movie.
There's a bit where they have to like create a reason why they're attacking the Capitol's like air defenses or shutting them. They're jamming their system or whatever. They contrive a reason for Finnick to go on and broadcast and just talk directly to the people of the Capitol, which I like. Before, I think I brought this up in our Catching Fire bit, but this is where he talks about how he was coerced into sex work, which again, something that you don't really see brought up in any sort of like teen-based media. Again, I think it's so not nice, but like refreshing that the Hunger Games is willing to tackle these kind of grim subjects. But while he is talking, he reveals that President Snow used poison a lot, so that's his mouth is full of sores. Not a very especially interesting secret, I think, but you know, it's fine, right? It's getting to like this idea that Finnick really did know stuff and had to, you know, he suffered for what happened. Excuse me. He suffered for what happened, but like he was also to get those secrets out of it. There's a bit where the broadcast cuts out and then Katniss comes in and she's able to like talk to Peeta directly, and Peeta's able to warn them about an air raid. So that's pretty cool. But the main thing that happens is that President Snow eventually talks to Katniss, and Katniss is like, hey, you know, I'll turn myself in if you just let Peeta go. And he's like, no, we know that your friends are in the tribute center, so we're gonna, you know, good luck, idiot. And leaves, which I think is really good. And Katniss freaks the fuck out. And both me and you noted in our notes, this is like an incredible performance from Lawrence. She is just absolutely hysterical. Did I lose them both tonight? She says to Haymitch, just fully crying. She either has to be sedated or like, you know, dragged off to bed. But they come back. The rescue team comes back with full numbers. The operation went great. Annie is brought back. Joanna's brought back. Or not? Yeah, Joanna. Wait. Was Joanna?
Yeah, Joanna comes back.
Okay. Yeah. Joanna shows up in the last movie. Okay. Joanna's brought back, and everybody seems to be okay, relatively speaking. You know, obviously they've been tortured, but they're doing okay. And Katniss goes to talk to Peeta. And Peeta, at first she's like really happy to see him, and then Peeta just fully tries to murder her. And it's a pretty grim scene. Eventually Mahershala Ali just has to hit him on the head with like a big pan or something, knocking him out cold. But it's revealed that Peeta has been mind controlled to fear condition him. They've used Tracker Jacker venom to like do evil Pavlov essentially on him. They're like, okay, here's a picture of Jennifer Lawrence, and now we're gonna, you know, zap your nipples. And then we're going to inject venom into you and just kind of do that over and over again to, you know, make him have like a fear association with Jennifer Lawrence or Katniss Everdeen, I suppose. And the last shot of the movie is him like thrashing around in bed, which it looks goofy, but I think it's also speaks to the very bleak nature of where this first movie goes and has been following these things.
I do like that last shot. Because it's through this like very narrow window that Katniss sees him just like thrashing around. I like it. It was good. It was good stuff.
I think so. Yeah. But overall, pretty good movie. I think it accomplished what it set out to do, which was to be like, hey, here's a grim exploration of what the reality of war looks like, and scary, spooky, scary skeletons. Are we ready to take us into part 2? Yeah, let's hit it.
All right. We open on a scene that mirrors the opening to Mockingjay Part 1, which is Katniss, now with her throat bruised from being attacked by PETA, struggling to say, "My name is Katniss Everdeen. I'm from District 12," which I liked. I liked as an opening. She is recovering pretty quickly, right? She gets her little collar taken off, and she's shaken up. But she's sent to the front lines pretty quickly after that to inspire the rebels in an assault on a District 2 stronghold. Before she sets off...
Leyla, what's the stronghold's name? It's called The Nut.
Oh, is that why this section is called The Nut?
Yes.
Great.
They call it's just a very funny, linguistic drift, right? Nut didn't quite have the connotation we have today, but it's just kind of a funny thing. Eventually, all words will mean come.
I hope so. Before they all set off, Katniss sees Gale and Beatty, who has been in these movies. He's in a wheelchair now. Talking about a new bomb they've designed, one that first causes casualties, then waits for medics to rush in, and then explodes again. I missed this entirely, but, well, that comes back later. Chekhov's delay bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Commander Paler is in charge of this assault. If you'll remember, she's the one that seems very competent. But the fortress is heavily defended. Gale suggests bombing the entrances and exits to the arsenal, trapping everyone in except for a train tunnel, which they leave open to allow refugees to escape. Katniss is brought to meet the refugees and to convince them to surrender. One of them has a gun and grabs Katniss, asking why he shouldn't kill her. She responds... She basically says, "Fucking do it then," is what she says. That she's tired of killing snow slaves for him, which was a pretty good argument. She still gets shot, but not by that guy, and in the chest plate it's an armor-proof chest plate in a very cunty battle outfit that Cinna designed for her.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that scene because I think of the scenes that work in Part 2, this scene is pretty appropriate because Katniss is just so haggard at this point. She's basically convinced that PETA will always be afraid of her and try to kill her. Coin is increasingly becoming a creep. She's out on the front lines watching people die. Gale and Beatty are out here planning war crimes. And she's just like, man, I'm done killing people. And I like the idea of being like, hey, man, I was Snow's slave. I had to kill, I was forced to kill people for him. You're doing the same thing. I think that's a very compelling argument to be like, yeah, when we're talking about class struggle, right? Like, we're all just like trying to get one over on each other. We're not focusing on our real enemy. I'm not going to fucking fight you, man. This is, I think maybe slightly better articulated in Pokemon, the first movie. But overall, the thesis still holds.
Say more?
So in Pokemon, the first movie, Mewtwo is a clone of Mew, and he's evil. Well, he's evil because he was raised by Giovanni, who is the mafia boss of Team Rocket. Team Rocket's an organization that likes to steal Pokemon and use them for nefarious ends. So, long story short, Giovanni makes Mewtwo kind of a bad guy. Mewtwo gets super powerful. He leaves to go start his own Pokemon gym, essentially. He calls all the trainers together to like try to see if humans are somehow different than him, if he can be bested by anyone. And in the climax of that movie, Mewtwo has like an army of clone Pokemon. He has them fight an army of or not an army, just like the groups of the trainers Pokemon that are like the protagonists of that movie, including Ash's Pikachu. And there's a song that goes, "Brother, my brother, tell me what are we fighting for? We just got to stop this war." And that, you can look this up on YouTube. It's a great scene. But I think that scene kind of gets across the same point that this scene in Hunger Games does, which is like, why are we fighting, y'all? We shouldn't be fighting each other. This is silly. Damn.
Damn's right. From one teen dystopia to another, Katniss, anyway, she still gets shot, but Katniss is fine, right? Sorry, now I'm just picturing Jennifer Lawrence slapping a clone of Jennifer Lawrence back and forth.
That could have happened. There's mutated people in this world. That's what we gotta watch the rest of these movies. We gotta see if they got mutated Jennifer Lawrence. That would be great.
We could come back to the prequels later. Finnick and Annie get married, right? We've rescued Finnick and Annie, and all the other tributes. It's a fun wedding. They play a cool little Irish jig. They do a bunch of dancing. Joanna's mildly bitchy to Katniss in a way that feels kind of disjointed from where their relationship left off during the Quarter Quell, but whatever. But Katniss is like, hey, I think I'm going to assassinate Snow, actually. And Joanna's like, bet, you should do that. Remember, a president's just a man. No comment. The plan is immediately derailed when Katniss sneaks onto a hovercraft, and she makes it to her destination, and then all of a sudden, oopsie poops, a team of soldier and her camera crew show up at the front lines, and it's led by Mahershala Ali, and they're like, cool, you're part of our unit now, and so is Gale. Yay! And she's like, fuck.
Yeah, and then the movie goes on for about an hour, and it's really fucking boring.
Like, whoever said let's split this book into two movies, truly, it's on site, bitch. I don't know who you are, but I'll figure it out. I'll know it when I see you. It is terrible. Anyway, Mahershala Ali. What?
I don't know that we need to talk a whole lot about the actual plot points in this. Basically, a bunch of people die, and Katniss gets really sad. I think a more interesting conversation, because this is already going on, we're already nearing an hour. I want to kind of talk about why this portion did not work for us, because you brought it up in your notes. And I'm wondering if it's because we've already seen Katniss nearly die a bajillion times in this franchise, but even in this movie, we see her get shot basically point blank, and she's fine. What other times did she nearly die in this movie?
PETA choked her out.
PETA, she starts with, nearly getting choked out by PETA. She's constantly in the front lines, getting shot at. Even in Mockingjay Part 1, I want to say, she gets several different near-death experiences, right? During the hospital bombing, she's nearly injured there. I just feel like there's a part of me that's like, I don't know. It feels like Katniss is invulnerable in a way that really takes a lot of the excitement out of this movie. Maybe that's because I know that Katniss can't die. But even if you know that a protagonist character can't die in a movie, you still there are sequences that should still work for you. They should either be dynamic or exciting or bring out some sort of emotion. I felt this was so flat and gray. Maybe it's because I don't care about any of the other characters except for Mahershala Ali, and they just kind of killed him in a very accidental way, which, again, that's war. Sometimes people die in kind of unglamorous ways. But yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts about this whole sequence. PETA is airdropped into this team too, and Mahershala Ali is like, this is probably because the president wants you to die. But I'm gonna keep an eye on you. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Why do you think that this whole section just doesn't work?
I think you bring up a good point in terms of it should get you to feel something and you just don't feel anything. Partially because, one, the characters Katniss is running around with, we don't get any time to get to know them at all. They're just kind of there. They have logistical functions. The AVOX cameraman, right, great performance from him. I was attached to him, obviously. He lost his brother. He was sobbing. It was a whole thing. But I'm thinking of movies that are just prolonged action sequences that have worked for us in the past. And the one that I keep coming back to in my head is Die Hard. Because if we think about Die Hard, it is Bruce Willis going to a different part of a building and then having to come back through a series of action sequences to the part of the building he was originally in. That's the whole goal. And the reason those sequences work is because he has two distinct character connections, one to his wife and two to that cop, that sad cop that's outside. And then he is charming, and he also gets like meaningfully wrecked throughout the process, and he grows as a person. He understands what he has been doing wrong, that has distanced him from his wife, and has moments of clarity. Katniss does none of that. She does not meaningfully change at all. She does not meaningfully grow at all. She doesn't let her single-minded desire for revenge against Snow get in her way in the way that's meaningful. There are no meaningful consequences for her actions. She recovers from every injury she has, which was not true in other movies. In The Hunger Games, she got pretty wrecked. In Catching Fire, she got pretty wrecked. But she's just, her, Gale, and Peeta are just too plot shielded. And it kind of cheapens what happens at the end, which is after this kind of gauntlet of stunts to go and assassinate Snow, which we ought to talk about the city after we're done with this little portion. Basically what happens is the Chekhov's bomb pays off, and you get the bomb delay, right? The parachutes come down, there's an initial explosion, the medics rush in, second explosion, and Prim dies. But Katniss's invincibility cheapens the effect of Prim dying, because it's like, oh, this is the highest stakes thing we could have done.
Right.
Because nothing else matters. And then that also dispels the Gale thing. Like, she never has to... Again, I remember we had this conversation when we were talking about the original movie. Katniss never has to make an actual difficult decision, because she doesn't even decide between Peeta and Gale, because Gale was involved in making those bombs. So he shows up when she is in the Snow's mansion after the fact. And she's just like, hey, were you involved? And he couldn't answer, and so she said, goodbye, Gale. And so the decision is made for her. And I think none of that hits. It hits in a superficial way. But Rue's death felt more impactful than Prim's death, because it was in a moment where Katniss had agency, and it felt like there were actual stakes. Which, side note, really quick, correction, Rue, I keep combining their names. Rue and Thresh are black in the books. The fandom was just so fucking racist in the aughts that they fooled me. So that's on me.
Not many such cases, unfortunately, but yeah, thank you for that clarification. I think you're right. Yeah, I think it is... I think it's a great way to point out that, yeah, Katniss never has to make a meaningful choice. She doesn't really change as a character, which makes her, I know she's supposed to be a tabula rasa for the reader in some ways. But yeah, I think that's a great diagnosis of the problem, is that she barely moves. The only choice she makes is at the end. And to be fair, it's probably it's the most interesting thing she does in this movie is, the choice that she makes. But it is the only choice, and it feels pretty forced on her.
It feels forced on her, but so the choice we're referring to here is she elects to Alma Coin, the president from District 13, gives the surviving tributes a choice. Hey, do we want to start a symbolic Hunger Games where we kill the children of the Capitolites? And everyone was like, no. Except for Katniss, and Haymitch follows Katniss's lead. Katniss says, I'll vote yes, but I get to kill Snow. To which Coin says, sick. Snow and Katniss have a heart-to-heart where he helps her figure out that the bombs that killed Prim, gonna get it someday, the bombs that killed Prim were from District 13, and so instead of shooting Snow at his own execution, she shoots Coin. That's great and all, but Coin turned from a kind of unsure, too polished, kind of awkward resistance leader into a dictator. It was crazy.
Yeah, I know. She went from Hillary Clinton to I don't know, Team Rocket,
what the right
evil.
Thinks Hillary Clinton is.
Right, yeah, exactly. Within a couple of scenes. It's bonkers. But yeah, Katniss is, when they say that Coin is directly responsible for Prim's death, it really just means that Katniss doesn't have a choice. And again, the meaningful decision is taken away from her. She just kind of has to follow through on it. So yeah, I think that does stink. I think Katniss deserved better as a character, although maybe in some ways the reason that the Hunger Games became as big a phenomenon as it is that people like to be able to be like, I like this person without reservation. She did the right thing, and she didn't have to make any meaningful choices, and maybe that's why people are like, I love Katniss Everdeen, because she's not morally compromised at all.
But in a movie that is so set on exposing the ills of revolution, it just feels like a weird choice.
Right.
It feels odd to be like, hey, here's a bunch of melted corpses in District 12, but our baby girl could never do anything wrong ever in her life because we won't let her.
Yeah. Yep.
Unlike some protagonists we've read about who do everything wrong ever in their lives, and we're still like, girl, we saw this coming, but I guess you do you.
Yeah, I mean, not to constantly go back to the Poppy War well, but this is what Rin does, right? Rin kind of has the opposite thing, where she becomes the leader of a revolution and defeats the Empire, and then just spirals into her own paranoia and wickedness, and that makes her interesting and compelling, because she ends up destroying the people around her because of her own. She becomes the thing that she sought to destroy,
and herself.
And herself, yeah, and I think that's great. I think that. If you want to talk about the grim realities of war and revolution, you can't have your protagonist have their hands clean all the time.
I agree. Yeah, so I think that's kind of where it is. But yeah, the movie ends with Alma Coin getting assassinated. Let's talk about. So Katniss gets a MacGuffin that's like a trap radar, and what we see is that Salt Lake City, which is the capital, I think, right? It's like somewhere in Utah or Colorado. It ends up being. There is just booby-trapped to shit, right, on the surface. And then we get into the subway, where the subway lights incinerate bitches, and the floor can fall out from under you, and they can just release mutants. And at some point, Snow is like, get the game makers on this. When did they build this shit? Is the Capitol always booby-trapped?
So they explicitly say they've drawn all the people outside of like the outer, like the suburbs of the capital, and then they go and booby trap them. But I mean, the fact that they were able to rig up literally thousands of booby traps in the space of a couple weeks is pretty impressive. It seems like it would take a long time to rejig your entire subray system to shoot out death rays. Like, that seems hard to do. I like the idea that the Capitol is and was always going to be the final Hunger Game. Like, the people who built it were like, okay, we have to immediately start designing this to be a sort of death dungeon. When I talk about RPGs, dungeon design is a big part of playing role-playing games, because of how Dungeons and Dragons works. And in a lot of RPGs, you have to justify why there are weird traps in a dungeon. And this is the Hunger Games at its most game-like to me. It's just like, yeah, there's just random obstacles in there. It's not that interesting. They just kind of have weird death traps. And I do think that if they have, done a little bit more work to be like, and actually the fountains that used to, spray gold and wine into the air, we can actually inject weird, evil black goo into them. That would have just gone a little bit more to be like, Again, let me and Leyla write the architecture meeting where 50 years ago the architects of the Capitol are like, okay, we gotta have some pits in here for Pan's Labyrinth demons to jump out at you.
I want to be in the meeting where it's like a budgetary fight over fucking pipe materials for the goo.
Mm-hmm. That
Come on.
I know that that's not what sells shit, but I would buy that in a heartbeat. This is why I like Fonda Lee so much. This is why I like S.A. Chakraborty, at least the David trilogy, because it is interested in the weird minutia of what makes various places work. It's like, okay, yeah, we need to get a certain material. We have to go to the fucking finance meeting and be like, okay, we have to get the votes in order to raise the taxes on the magic rock, because otherwise the fantasy Americans are gonna try to do a coup on us or whatever. And I just think that when you drill down into the specifics, it helps you extrapolate your world in such a more interesting way. This is why I make so many YouTube videos that are like that. That's like, okay, let's take a small detail that you've kind of thrown in there from a role-playing game and try to imagine a world outside of that. And I think, I know that's not why you can't do that and have a blockbuster teen franchise, but you should be able to, is what I posit.
I agree. Also, I think you can sell it. I think you could, if people got into BBC Sherlock and it's bullshit in 2012, I think we could figure out a way to do it. We just need a compelling enough front man. Anyway.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. We're watching Andor next, and there is an evil people meeting, which I think fucking kicks ass. It's really good. I think you're gonna really like Andor season 2. I'm not quite as high on it as season 1, but I like a lot of it, and I think there's parts that you're gonna love.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should talk about how this bitch ends. Anyway, Katniss shoots Alma Coin. Prim is dead. Finnick is dead. Joanna's alive. Peeta's alive. Gale, he goes off to do revolutionary shit, so we don't gotta give a fuck about him. Peeta returns to District 12 with Katniss. It was a very funny moment where he's like planting shit outside, like mustard or whatever, outside of primroses. He's planting primroses.
It's primrose, yeah.
And I know this is like me. My problem was that when I'm bored in a movie, I start noticing shit. My like film school fucking juvenile critic brain turns on, and I was so bored by this part of the movie that I was just staring at him, and he goes, "I found these outside by the forest edge." No, you didn't. They're still clumped together from the pot they came in, baby boy. That's a potted root clump. We couldn't get an intern to fluff that out a little bit in some water for you. Anyway, he plants them, and then him and Katniss end up sleeping together, not like sexually, but like sleeping together in the same bed, and he goes, "You love me, real or not real?" She says real, and then we cut to the epilogue, in which for some godforsaken reason, Katniss is in like a trad wife dress, sitting on a hill, but her and Peeta have kids, and she's holding her baby, and she's talking about her trauma to the baby, and then Peeta's off in the distance playing with the toddler, and I'm like, this would be cute, but I'm so distracted by the trad wife dress that it's fucking killing me. And the movie ends. Oh,
yeah.
Hey Mitch, sorry, forgot. Before she goes to District 12, I just found this very funny. Hey Mitch comes to her and reads her a letter from Plutarch, who survived, which, by the way, part of this movie's production was hampered by the fact that, unfortunately, Philip Seymour Hoffman tragically died. So their footage of him was very, very limited, and there was only so much they could do. But anyway, Haymitch reads her a letter from Plutarch, and to me, it just felt like this is a niche pull, and I'm very sorry. It reads like Andrew Lloyd Webber's letter from the cancellation of Bad Cinderella.
I have not heard of this.
Basically, when Bad Cinderella got canceled, Andrew Lloyd Webber's company just kind of tweeted it, and that's how the actors found out. And then instead of showing up to the last performance, he had his producer read a letter.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
It's rough, buddy. Maybe you should have written a better musical.
Yeah, there's some great, I will put it in the show description because I just think it's a funny bit of production, but there are a couple of really great videos by Ashley Norton and another guy whose name I'm blanking on about Bad Cinderella and the production of it, and that both feature that letter. And if you like train wrecks, good watch. Good times.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully didn't believe you when you said that they had kids at the end of this story, and I was like, that can't be right, because I have such a vivid memory of Katniss being like, I don't know if I ever will have kids. And I went on Wikipedia. Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was the end of the book. Wrong, incorrect. Even in the book, this happens, so, you are completely right. It's a crazy thing to do. I understand the impulse to take a series that is all about murdering children, at the end have your protagonist who participated in the murdering children games have children of her own to symbolize like, hey, the world's better now. And also, I just think that, again, it just kind of, there is something, I know you're kind of joking with the trad wife dress stuff because like that hadn't really become a mainstream thing yet. It's still not mainstream certainly, but like people know what you say what you mean when you say trad wife now. But it does feel like this kind of, I think it's an easy resolution that I don't especially love, where it's like, okay, in order to show how a story is ending happily, the protagonist is married and has kids. And I think that is a waste in a story where you could have made a more interesting choice than just be like, and then they lived happily ever after.
My pitch is Katniss, instead of having her own children, because also I hate when Assassin's Creed Odyssey did this too. There is this thing when media properties want female characters to have children. The pregnancy itself is glossed over. And I think that is such a huge mistake. And the reason that I don't have a problem with protagonists having children. I think sometimes that's an interesting thing to explore narratively, or sometimes it's just kind of a sweet ending to say they had a family or and stuff like that. A lot of this series has to do with how these teenagers' bodies are exploited, either for the purposes of the Capitol or for the purposes of revolution. We have Phoenix explicitly talking about how he was basically coerced into sex work. Katniss herself has a lot of things done to her that she did not consent to. She's medicated a lot. She, had a tracker put in, tracker taken out. Like, a lot of things happened to her that took her body and her autonomy away from her. I just don't think psychologically the person that went through all that would have like a great time in pregnancy.
Yeah.
I just don't think that Katniss would want another life inside of her in that way, because I think it could be very traumatic. And even though the world of the Hunger Games has trains, I don't think it has therapists.
It sure doesn't seem like it.
So I think it would have worked better, because Finnick is dead, right? Annie is not. You could kill Annie, though. Everyone fucking dies. No offense, Annie. I think you're fine. I think it would have worked better if maybe she had either, like Haymitch, become more of a mentor figure to some kids, or maybe adopted Annie and Finnick's kid, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that's a great read.
It would have still had that, hey, it's safer to raise new generations now without necessarily having to feminize Katniss in a way that feels demeaning to the character. Not that femininity is demeaning, but just in that the way it is deployed in this specific epilogue, in this specific context, it feels strange.
I agree. No, I think you're completely right. I think that a much stronger ending would have been Katniss talking, passing on some form of bodily autonomy, or at least training, the next generation to have more agency would be great. So, yeah.
Or hey, again, in a stronger Mockingjay, maybe Prim wouldn't have to die, and maybe Katniss could help Prim with her kids.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Overall, though, do you think that the series works? Like, we're 10 years out from it. We are currently facing a minor constitutional crisis here in the United States. Do you think that, for all its flaws, and we've talked about them throughout the last couple of months, do you think that the Hunger Games lives up to, or, deserves its reputation?
Yeah, I liked it. I liked revisiting it. I thought there was a lot to chew on, more to chew on than I thought there would be. I probably think the books likely work better than the movies because, again, Mockingjay is really stilted by being split into two halves. But yeah, I think it's a great primer for teens on conflict.
I agree. I think that's where I come down is like, these stories work really well because they are about as subtle as a sledgehammer, and they're like, hey kids, this is what authoritarianism looks like, or looked like in, the early 2000s, or at least the ramp up to it. And because Susan Collins is not afraid of just being like, here is the direct message of the story, the government will try to turn you against each other. I think that ultimately they succeed in trying to make people feel an emotion about something that's the message that's not very subtle. And of course, not all media is the message, but I think that in a story that's as explicitly political as the Hunger Games, they broadly achieve their aim. So shout out to Suzanne Collins. I think you're a real one.
I don't know if you logged these on Letterboxd as you watched them, but I always take a peek at the other reviews, and a lot of the other reviews right now for especially the earlier Hunger Games movies are like, feeling a little too close to home.
Yep, you hate to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to do a marketing minute, was just like, how do we make our own YA blockbuster here at Mortified Industries? And then I remembered we're kind of already doing that with Project Hot Seat. So if you want to see me and Leyla's take on what it looks like to be a teen / undergrad in an authoritarian, weird dystopia, keep your eyes peeled. It probably won't be out for another year or so, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We're slowly but surely picking away at it. There's a very hot staple remover in it, so.
Hell yeah, there is. When we are not objectifying objects, where can we be found on the internet, Leyla?
You can find me at LEYLSES on Tumblr and Blue Sky. I just finished Hollow Knight Silksong. I will be writing about that. I am also working on my essay about the Final Fantasies 7 through 9. So you can look out for that soon. Yeah, that's kind of about it for me. What about you?
You can find me on Blue Sky at AAVoit, Tumblr at Monster Factory Fanfic, but my main site is aavoit.com, where I write about games and writing, I guess. And I also have a YouTube channel that's AAVoit. I was supposed to have a video out about Deathmatch Island by Tim Dene. That's probably not going to be out for another couple of weeks because I am going on a trip to see Leyla and partially here in the next couple of weeks. So not going to have that video out until after that. But I did write a review of Deathmatch Island, which was going to be the first draft of the script. I don't like making reviews. I think my reviews are kind of boring. But if you join my Patreon, which is patreon.com/AAVoit, you read that if you're dying to give me $4. But
and you should be.
Thank you. Our theme song is Obsolete by Keshco from the album Filmmaker's Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshco.bandcamp.com. How shall we say goodbye to the Hunger Games, Leyla?
Aaron, I have one condition for ending the episode.
And what is that?
My sister gets to keep her cat.
We'll see you all next time.